So Bored Again started about 3 years ago when all I could get out of the lyrics for a second was just the word again. I originally wrote the lyrics out on my usual lyric notebook, but they weren't really going anywhere, so I decided to rewrite them and reapproach them entirely on my typewriter. I decided to write about wanting to go out, but not really wanting to go anywhere, and I kind of, in the process, re-examined why I even go out at all. When I first demoed this song, I didn't have a drum set with me, so I put a microphone on the floor and taped it down, and then I slammed my heel on the floor for the kick, and then boosted the bass on that. And then for a snare, I had a shoebox that I taped paper on top of, and then a jewel CD case, and then slapped it with a stapler to make my snare sound, put a mic on that, and then I had a hi-hat as well. I really liked how the drums sounded, the drum set that I made up sounded with this. So I wanted to retain that in the final version. When the band started getting used to it and they were jamming it out as a three-piece, I pretty much realized I didn't really need to do anything, and I wanted a song where I could just sing and walk around on stage on, and this one was perfect for it. And then when we went to record it, I had everyone cram into my, I think, 12-foot by 12-foot room at our house in St. Pete, and the drums, the Wurlitzer, the bass, and me dancing around and everything all fit in there. And then we had Dwight as well recording the whole session, which is up on YouTube. And the final take is actually what you see us playing. I think I overdubbed, redid the vocals, and added some piano and other bits, but that's the actual take. I really think having everyone crammed in the room got the point across on the song, especially with the drums. I also added some piano arpeggio in the chorus by recording in half speed. This one has sort of a long journey. It started with a jam session between Sheldon Cooper and I in April 2018. Now, Sheldon does all of the horns that you hear on our Fail to Learn album. This is a month before the album came out, and he came over to our studio, which is, the old storage space. We started jamming out something that sounds a little like this, where he was playing saxophone and I was playing keyboard. Which you can actually hear on the cassette Normalcy EP is on. Sheldon started playing this riff on the keyboard. Which we kind of worked together on and started developing. The demo that we left with at the end of the day is absolutely nothing like the final song. Here's this whole part that obviously never made the song. The tempo and everything changes. So I took this idea home and sat on it for a little bit, and then I eventually came up with this really sparse chorus because I felt like I was shoving too many lyrics and choruses in the past, and I wanted to have a really long pause between the vocals in the chorus and make sort of a statement out of it. When I made a demo out of the completed song that I wrote, Sheldon didn't even recognize it. I had turned that main riff into something being played by strings. so I knew Sheldon had to be involved to help make that happen. I had my friends Taylor, Melissa, and Sandy come in to play violins, viola, and cello, and we multi-tracked it, and Sheldon came along and conducted everything that he'd written for it. We really managed to get a huge sound out of a small string section, just layering things over. And it's crazy the harmonic flourishes that Sheldon brought into this and how it really transformed the song into being this huge ballad that I wanted it to be. Stuff like what you hear on the second interlude. Or say on the bridge. Or even this amazing flourish that happens to carry you into the second half of the last chorus. And some of my favorite things in this session, we have these leads on verse 2 that added some bit crusher too. And that's also the wind chime that we had in our song Ideal State. I just pulled it over into here and put some effects on it. And the drums in this song go through some wild changes. Intro, there's all room mic, and then we switch to this with the snare sample largely replacing the snare. And then we bring in more real drums gradually. And then I added in this snare sample that's actually a combination, a trashy China cymbal and a really big gongy snare as well. So back in 2015, I had this loop that I made. And then I threw in a melody. And this really felt like a new sound for me. But I didn't know what to do with it. I even fully started writing a song around this, with vocals and all.
Everyone looks more like
Me playing all the stuff.
when they need a reason to do what they want. When they need a reason to do what they want.
I don't know, I didn't really like any of the other parts that I wrote for it other than just this chorus. So sometimes the original is better than what you end up doing with it. So I took this one and I hit the tape 3 times with it. I hit it once, brought it back into Pro Tools, went in again, and then did it a 3rd time. And then when I did it the 3rd time, I again touched the tape a bit to make it warble and really messed it up. And I faded it out and then kind of faded it back in. Really wanted this to sound like was sort of like a transition track that was thrown into something like a hip-hop record. Since I got this tape machine, I've recorded a lot of different things on it. I wanted to have the Pica one start with a sort of going from slow to fast quickly. I first recorded a bunch of rewinded sound straight off the tape, which was playing a bunch of random demos and everything that I had recorded on there. There's a high and low speed button, and I hit play and immediately went from low speed to high speed, which kind of brought that in. Kind of provided more of like a vibe transition to go from something super serious like But Not Me to something more lighthearted like All the Wondering. All the Wondering. I wrote this when I was having a lot of stomach issues and I was Googling things too much. I was looking at my symptoms on WebMD which is never a good idea when you also have anxiety on top of things. I believe this one started just with the piano riff, which eventually became the chorus melody as well. A crucial part of the piano sound was placing the felt between the hammers and the strings. When the electric guitar starts coming in, I'm sliding my finger all over the top trying to get some harmonics. I eventually land on the right harmonic note that rings in the key of the song. Since the chorus is so sparse, I put a lot of rhythmic elements in it. I have a guitar that's chugging single note, and then I had Vincent add a triangle, and then I also added this electronic drum machine that pops up in other parts of the song, which is actually just this crappy old $25 keyboard that I bought. Which I think was on the samba setting or the bossa nova setting, and just added a bunch of things to it, pitched it differently, added a delay, compressed it, added an EQ. When we recorded the drums, we used a really thin, small snare. I think it was maybe 12 inches, and then we also layered on top of that snare a snare sample that I created out of a rim hit, and then me just hitting like a piece of metal on a box full of stuff. And then I think I added in some other sounds as well, and then sampled that in over every snare hit. Since I played piano on this, Matt was trying to come up with an idea of what to play, and he first thought of accordion, and I figured, yeah, that would be probably perfect, and we put it on verse 2. Also on verse 2 is my little tribute to the song I Wanna Know by Joe. And then of course I get to the end of the 2 verses and choruses and not sure where to go, so I took the big old gospel choir route and layered multiple voices. So let's see how many vocal tracks we have here for the gospel choir. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 28. And then to complete the whole lo-fi atmosphere, I added some vinyl crackle that I got from this old 70s or so vinyl called Are UFOs a Reality? Promise to the Anonymous started when I found some chords I really liked on the piano. I had this nerdy funk thing going on, and the most nerdy funk topic I could write about is how I used to be saving myself for marriage. I have this contact mic that I put on the pressure bar of my upright piano to get this sort of like glassy, tinny sound. We doubled that bass line with 2 guitars that are panned left and right. Always a really good funky move. Bass came out way gnarlier than I thought. Emmett was really worried about playing it because it was this 1983 Squier Bullet bass of mine that I used to have that I actually sold like a month after I recorded this. The chorus to me sounded sort of like a mix of an adult alternative thing with, I don't know, some other random grooves that I liked. I threw in that reverse vocal, which was just a grab from one of the vocals in the chorus, a freeze portion, and then I reversed it and then threw it in the beginning. To me, that chorus drum beat is kind of like anything but a traditional drum beat. It's kind of like an anti-drummer thing. We also have this great like 60s-ish style guitar and played like really slight with my finger to get that really trebly rhythm guitar sound. Then there's kind of this like pulsating synth that's driving through the chorus that actually is sidechained to the kick, so you get sort of a mixture of somewhat an electronic thing. When the guys were learning this song, I originally was just gonna go into an outro after the second chorus, but they started throwing this idea that we were gonna go into like a big, I don't know, disco breakdown type thing, and they did the 4 on the floor beat. And so I said, okay, shit, let's try it, go with a joke. And it ended up working out. We really sped up the tempo and like did a crazy chord change. I was trying to let the song like totally warp. I threw in like, I think 2 different phasers on the entire track. just to like have the song kind of warp like you're putting a cassette in and it's transforming into something from a different decade. I forgot to mention, I was texting with Vincent about this song and he said, Booker T, Socrates, you can say that in the song and it works. So I said, okay, let's actually do it. We also layered in all that percussion. I think Vincent played bongos in his closet. And then made a glass bottle thing for a type of clave, and then had a shaker as well. And of course we had to have a synth solo throughout that, because what else do you do with something like that? Just to hype up that solo at the end, I vocoded some lyrics onto it, so I'm actually vocoding on top of the solo. So I needed a way to get from Promise to the Anonymous into Never Gave Back. Didn't really build enough tension to come out of the end of Promise, which ends on, to just go straight into Never Gave Back on C. So by going from to this weird chord, and I was able to half step down and then go into Never Give Back. Since Never Gave Back was mostly the Wurlitzer and Promise to the Anonymous was mostly piano, it was nice to slowly transition from being a piano-dominated into a Wurlitzer-dominated melody. I also ran everything through this tape machine, manually gave it some warble by sticking my finger on the tape and making it kind of bump around. The best clue I can give you about the lyrics in this song is that it's not just about one person. I had this whirly loop that I played all the chords over when I first started writing it. I ran the whirly loop through my pedal board and just messed around with a bunch of effects. I put those in randomly in the verses, and then as I came up with the main vocal, I kind of wanted this mix of gospel in there that I've always been trying to get into almost every song. Harmonies in the choir just kind of came about naturally. I would start one line and then the next line I would just throw out another harmony that would work, and it all basically came about in a really organic way. And those are actually all from the demo, so they weren't redone for the final. In other words, I wasn't really conscious of what notes I was singing. Sometimes I checked them on the piano, but I prefer to just write them off the top of my head instead of trying to find the harmonies on the piano. And that sort of felt out approach also happened with the electronic kit. I was playing it out on the drum pad that I have, and I actually don't even think that I made that fit to the grid. It was just the way I played it out. When I do the key change to go into the bridge after doing the two verses, there's a lot of different layers that come in to really change the vibe. We have me hitting the leg on my whirly, that bell sound in the background, and then I added some lo-fi to it to bit crush it, as is my favorite thing to do. I also have this acoustic guitar that I filtered a ton of the frequencies out of. So that it's really hollow. And then we have these two synth sounds, one of them doing a sort of crescendo siren noise, and then the other one was sort of inspired by the Jimmy Eat World song If You Don't Don't, where on their bridge they have a sort of da-da-da-da-da-da-da. I approached it as closely as possible and added this sort of stuttery sound that comes in and out. Since the whole song kind of has this undecided feel, I wanted it to end on more of a positive, almost like victorious note. So all those guitars happen. On my Fender Coronado, I played that main lick, which is sort of that spaghetti western sounding one. And then I came in with a low octave on the Rickenbacker that I have, which I actually detuned the low string all the way down to A or something. And then with the high version, the super high version at the end. It's my Epiphone Casino, and all having different effects and whatnot on them. For some reason I felt like it was going a little too far to do those super high notes at the end on the casino, but it almost felt like just cheesy enough. Pica 3, just like Pica 1, is another sort of failed song idea that I was never content with. The song had 2 different time signatures, and I don't know, I guess I just wasn't really feeling the direction I took on the lyrics. However, also like Pica 1, it seemed like something that was defining the sound of this album, so I did want to include it in some way. And it just so happened to be the perfect transition, coming out of Never Gave Back, ending on the D, and then starting in the middle of the chord progression on Pica 3, starting on that D, and then ending in the perfect way to go to that G minor that starts Won't Sit Down. I liked how it sort of reminds me of like a neo song, like a early 2000s R&B type thing. I wanted to add some electronic elements and kind of had the wub wub bass in there to drive the anticipation, bring it from the organic ending of Never Gave Back more into an electronic thing to set you up for how Won't Sit Down is, which is really more of an electronic song. I heard this high frequency in the LFO of the synth that I was using, so I actually sent it out in an aux and then EQ'd that to make that frequency stick out, and then pan it left and right. That's how you get that. When I started recording this, didn't realize I was going to put in all those electronic elements. I recorded the acoustic and the whirly and everything without a click because I wanted it to be more floaty and natural. So then I had to keep in time by moving the LFO knob on my synth. I had to keep it just in time with the rhythm of the song without a click, which is really hard to do. It took me forever to get right. For me, music is kind of something I do on my own, and I feel most creative when I'm doing it by myself. Not only does this block out other musicians, but also blocks out probably other people in my life since I spend so much time doing it. So this is the session for My Own Miserable, and you might be wondering, why do I have this open when I'm talking about Won't Sit Down? Well, it's all because of this sound, which I called Bouncy Ball, but it's really just an organ that I put some talkbox setting on. It inspired me to play these set of chords, and I was playing this, and I think I just kind of started singing this part. No, I won't sit down. Put some chorus and a little bit of formant mix in there. So that is actually the chair squeak of the stool that I sit on whenever I play the Wurlitzer. Always balancing between being a total minimalist, but then also being a maximalist when it comes to layering instruments in. Something I really liked adding was these kind of fake trap hats. Alternating between a filter that's sweeping downward and then one that sweeps upward in that last bar. Really just a real drum set, a Wurlitzer, and a bass. Then we get into the maximalist part, and we bring all these synths in on the pre-chorus. Which, if we hear one by one, is this swirly one, this lead, these misty chords. And then we also have the sort of bouncy thing that bounces around. This is one of them that I did a vocoder on, and then did a little While I say I was rather isolationist in a lot of my music making, this song actually changed a lot because of working with the band on it. They said we needed a bridge because before I didn't have the bridge that we added eventually, and Matt brought up this part. Which I found that sound for, and it really inspired me, that just those two chords, to go on and create the rest of what became the bridge, which is actually my favorite part of the entire album. I got this synth trying to sound like a harpsichord out of my Prophet back here. It blended the medieval feeling of the chord progression and also the inspiration that was running through the whole album of switching between major and minor, sort of taking on like a classical sound, also being modern because it's a synth playing it, not a harpsichord. I also want to call out my friend Tito, who has actually subbed in on drums on a 100% tour before, who did a little take on drums of this song before I even worked with the band on it, which I threw in there and kind of gave us the whole stop transition right before we came into the first chorus. There are a lot of broken down approaches that I took to this. I tried singing the whole thing sitting down in my closet, which actually just, I think, generated the chorus only. It's kind of weak and broken sounding. I also have this guitar solo, which is partially the demo and partially the redo that I did, because it just couldn't match the tone that I had on that demo, to the point where you actually get this part where it breaks up. Was originally written as a transition piece for the album, but lyrics made their way in, and it really became like a statement piece for the album. I was trying to write as many things as possible that switched from major to minor key. That main chord, the B flat, switches back and forth from being a minor chord to a major chord. Other layers this track included: Vincent came in with this Gregorian chant part. Then I added in a microtonal. We have a synth that I call Tinkles, that kind of fades in and out, ultimately being slowed down, and that. We also have these piano tingles, I call them, which has a bunch of delay on it. This low synth that comes in, synth strings. We also have this sort of moany drony sound, which is actually just an extension of the part of it that the piano plays, stretched out way longer than it should be. It just kind of bends in and out. Which is really me just playing 3 notes. I think when I was doing all the takes to this, we were going on vacation the next day, and I was up until maybe 12:30 at night, just playing maybe like 20 different takes. I was certain that none of them were good enough. I wanted it all to be one take, and ended up finding the one, which it looks like ended up being take 4. On the But Not Me EP, we released a shorter version of this song, but on this version on the album, it has a conclusion. I think the way the melody sounded sort of influenced the lyrics, and I'm always writing about types of loneliness. Just sort of came about to write about being lost in virtual reality in this one, even though it's something I definitely haven't been through. I really wanted this to sort of sound like a robotic version of a Ray Charles song, but then in the chorus get really strangely erotic in some ways, like a Prince song would. I had to do the vocals all myself, 3-part harmony, because this quarantine had just started. And I realized that the ending with a 4-part harmony had an insanely high vocal part, so I asked my fiance Stephanie to sing that, and she did. And it's a rather complex harmony, actually. So Rust has this particular time signature change where it goes from 4/4 in the verse to 3/4 in the chorus, just like Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds does. And to make it work, all you gotta do is that the 3 hits, also featured in an old song of mine called Throw the Rake. And then near the end, I had this big scream that I had trouble holding the note on, so I just decided to auto-tune it, put distortion on it, and reverb. Big old hipster treatment.